I was just going to put this video together to show you some of the steps that I've taken to set up my Raspberry Pi. It sounded easy in the instructions, but there was a few gotchas and it took me a couple tries, and so I'm kind of hoping to go back and show you some of the things that I've learned. Well, what do you need a Raspberry Pi for? Really, it's a system on chip. In other words, this is a complete computer, and I mean, it's a step up from the microcontrollers. It has an operating system, $50, really cheap. We've also got the ability to connect to the internet. It has a Wi-Fi built in, or you can plug it in with just a standard Ethernet internet cable. We can also connect this thing to a screen. It's fully high definition with an HDMI connector, and pretty much every commercial device that you can think of, you know, a mouse pointer, a USB microphone, you name it, you can plug in a printer, and it's fully functional. And as well, one of the features that it has is this, the bar right up here, or I should call them the pins. This is called the Gpio. It's just input output. It allows you to connect things, and they're little on-off switches that you can use to control things like lights or sensors or cameras. So anyway, that's a quick rundown of this thing. So you need to know there's some limitations. You're not going to be doing any really heavy calculations. I believe the Pi 3 that I have here has about 512 megabytes. So it's not huge when it comes to resources. However, you know, for people who've been using it for a while, for media servers, for internet servers, you know, it can do light work and pretty much do a lot of various things remotely. The point of this thing is to plug it into an appliance or plug it into something to control it and to have it connected through the internet. You need to understand Raspbian is not a real-time OS. That is the Linux that is installed on this thing. So what that means is it's not guaranteed to respond within a certain time. You know, when you use your computer and things hang for about a second or two, and then finally it comes back. Well, that is possible. And so this is not a system that you'd use for, say, like an autopilot in a vehicle where, you know, timing is everything. If the computer is busy, you don't want to have it going around in a little circle of death while it's waiting to come back, and then you crash into something. So anyway, the other catch is there is no analog inputs. It's not built in, but there are workarounds. There's certain peripherals that you can plug into it, and so you can actually get analog signals in. This would be of interest for anyone that's doing any analog and digital conversion. But for most uses, you really don't need it. And as I say, if you do, there are various ways in which you can work around. So here I've got what was included in my kit. You have the Raspberry Pi board. There is the power supply. The Ethernet cable I had to provide myself. It was just something I had around. And there's a micro SD card adapter. Some computers actually still have the SD ports where you can plug in, but the laptop I picked up here last year does not. We got a lot of USB ports. So here is the SD card. Just slips into this USB and then plugs in and shows up as a drive on your system. I want to do something a bit different here, and this is part of my big picture setup that I want to share, is being able to get to this Pi remotely. Chances are you don't want to drag your screen and drag your computer out to wherever this thing is located in your home, or maybe even have it you know, out in the garage. It'd be really kind of nice to, wherever it has a Wi-Fi connection or where it's connected into your internet, that I can get to it from, say, a PC or another laptop. So to start off, we're going to go to the Raspberry site. So you just want to go here to www.raspberrypi.org. I'm not very good at spelling, and apparently I don't usually type out Raspberry much. But anyway, so come to here, and then we're going to go to the software. And anyway, so we'll just scroll down here for a little bit. And so what they're doing is they're recommending you have this Raspberry Pi imager and just click on your download. Now I'm using Windows, but it's available if you have Mac OS or running some form of Linux. So I've downloaded that thing. Go to my downloads folder, and I can start up the imager. Give it some permissions, and we'll just start installing. So what this program will do is it will download the latest version, run the Raspberry Pi imager. It'll run the latest version of this Raspberry OS now is what they call it. It used to be called Raspbian, and they had various other names. The other reason I'm kind of making this video is a lot of resources on the internet tend to be a little older, and some of these steps have changed, not significantly, but enough that it's much different. So in my case, I want to choose a, here, this is the Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit. This is what's recommended. Now, they got a whole bunch of other things here if you're a power user, but I'm designing this more for the beginner. And so it's 1.1 gigabytes to download. And then what I can do is I can then choose an SD card. So this is my Pi right here. And so what I'm going to do is I've got myself a little SD card, plugs into a little USB dongle, and let's go back here. There we go. So you can see I've got this generic storage device. I can click on that and then just hit right, and then just make sure you don't have anything on this SD. This is the one that came with the kit, so it will overwrite noobs, but that's okay. We're going to do this a little bit differently. I sure want to continue. Yes. So we'll just wait for it to download and to install. By default, the Pi has a security. It doesn't really like things to remotely connect to it, which is a feature of Linux. Actually, it's a very secure OS. But in my case, I want to open things up so I can get to it. So what I've done is I went back and I unplugged my Pi. I pulled out the SD card and I plugged that back into my computer. Now, in my case, it's right here. This is the removable drive. I won't be able to see the entire drive since I am on a Windows system, and this is a Linux operating system, but it does give me access to this partition. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add a new, just a text document, and all I'm going to do is just type in SSH and enter, and yes. And what this is it works like a flag. When the operating system starts up, the Raspberry Pi starts up, it looks for this file, and if it sees that file, it will then now enable this SSH, which is basically, it's the security protocol that allows the two computers to talk to each other. So anyway, let's try this again, and I will remove the SD card and put this back into the Pi. Okay, now we're going to go try to find our Pi on the network. One of the recommendations I have is definitely go through the documentation at the Raspberry Pi.org site. If you look here under the software, hardware tab here, you got this link here for documentation. In fact, they've done a very good job of setting things up. There's a setup, quick start, and various different things you can do to learn about the system. In my case here, I'm actually looking at this remote access, accessing your Pi remotely via SSH. And so if you kind of scroll through here, it'll show how to find your Raspberry Pi IP address in order to connect to it. So this is what I'm interested in. The other one that I'm interested in here is the SSH. This is the access, the command line of a Pi from another computer. Maybe later on we'll have a look here at the copy files between the two. But you have all these other options. Now these are things that you're familiar with. That's great. Use what you know. But I'm just going to focus on those two. I find those are definitely the easiest that I've found for setting things up. So in order to find the IP address, now again, it talks about I can get that if I'm logged into the Pi, it's connected to a display. In our case, this is what we're dealing with here. This is using the Pi headless without a display. So this one here is probably the easiest of all the options. Just go to your web browser, and then I'll cut and paste this link into my web browser. In my case, I don't have 1.1. For some reason, my router has a 1.254. But I think probably 80% of the routers that are out there, this will be the correct way to find the router. And I'll just go to that right now. So in my case here, I've entered that up in the address bar, kind of hiding my IP address. I don't want any surprises, thanks internet. You want to protect those numbers, but these are internal numbers. And so what I'm looking for is scrolling through all my devices here. This will probably be a printer. I got a Chromecast. This is my laptop. And so you can see right here, there's a Raspberry Pi connected, and then it gives me an address. So this number here is quite important. This is the address that tells me, how to get to the Pi. So I still can't connect direct to it. I'm going to have to add one more piece of software. Since I'm on a Windows system, if you're on a Mac or Linux, chances are really good this software is already installed. I don't have a Mac in front of me, so I don't want to say definitively that you have it, but you can go search on the internet and find out where to get that. Anyway, in my case, I'm just going to go to my apps and features here. And under my apps and features, I want to click on this optional feature. Now, this is something that was added around 2018. Windows 10 actually added SSH as one of its internal programs called an Open SSH server. The reason I'm installing this actually is for the next step. When I start getting into code editors, the code editor actually uses this server in order to connect. So then I can click on install and just wait for things to start installing here. Okay, now the Open SSH server is installed. Okay, I seem to have ran into another gotcha. Before, when I went and typed in my router address here in the browser, I was able to go through and I had this Raspberry Pi, but the symbol over here tells me that was Wi-Fi. Somehow, I'm not sure, it figured that the Wi-Fi was out there and active. So all I did was just type this back in and refresh the page. And if I scroll down to the bottom, this is what I was actually looking for right here. I have a Raspberry Pi, has a little computer symbol. This tells me it's actually physically connected with a cable. And here is the address that I need to log in. I was having trouble being able to connect with SSH. So I'm going to try this one more time. I'm just going to the Windows PowerShell and say yes to the security. So when I type in the SSH, I'm going to type in Pi because that is the default username. If you change the username, that will be different. And then what I'm doing is I am typing in that. Now, this is the direct way of doing it. This works really good if you have static IPs, but a lot of IPs now are dynamic and they can change. So if new things come on your network, guess what? This might not be 69 anymore. It would be 66 or something different. But I will type that in. So it's going to ask me for a password. Now the default password is Raspberry. So you're going to type in Raspberry and enter. So here we go. We now have logged in to the Pi. So one of the things that you want to have a look at is you want to have a look at getting this thing to tell you some more information. I'll show you one command here. It is called Ifconfig. And if I hit enter, so what this does is from the Pi, it's now telling me all the addresses and numbers. So this ETH, this is the Ethernet. This is the physical cable plugged in, and its address, this is iNet, is what you're looking for. So this is what I logged in with. So this is what I was able to find with the SSH. This here doesn't really tell you much, and then it'll actually tell you if there's a Wi-Fi operating. So there you have, that's how to connect. In order to exit, just type in exit and it will log you back out. So this is the direct way of getting into the Pi. The second way, and for me it is better, because in that way it doesn't matter if it's a Wi-Fi or the Ethernet, you can always log in, and that is by using it's a Bonjour service. If you have a Mac, this is already installed. If you've installed iTunes, this is already on your system. Just really kind of hoping it would come up there. Okay, so download here. I want to get something from Apple. So this is what you're looking for, is in the support page here. You can download this Bonjour print service and then hit click download and install this. And so this will enable you on a PC, on a Windows machine. Having this will allow you to type in SSH very differently. Let's get this down here. So I can then type in SSH, and I'll still have to go Pi at, and what this will be is Raspberry Pi .local. Now this makes it possible for me to just skip all those numbers and see if it responds. There we go. So then I can type in Raspberry, and here we go. I am in. Okay, so at this point, you've logged into your Pi. I'll just switch back to the console. So you have a look here. There's some information. It's basically saying that SSH is enabled, but you're using a default password for a username Pi. So pretty much in the entire world will have these credentials. So what it's doing is it's giving you some great instructions here. I can type in passwd in order to set a new password, which is a really good idea. So I'll just go passwd. And now it's saying, okay, changing password for Pi. I mean, you can even change the username if you want. This is just a development machine, and I'm behind my own router and a firewall in my own local network. If I were on a shared computer system, outside of my local network, I'd be a little more concerned. This is not something that you'd want to have out in the wild. So I'll just change it to a password that I'm going to remember. Oop, how about I get that one right? So you can use the up and down arrows to quickly get the what you typed in before. I have to type in Raspberry one last time. Now I can put in my new password and retype it to make sure there's no spelling mistakes or typos. Okay, so now my password's been updated successfully. So that's one part of the security. Let's see, what else does it say here? Well, right now my Wi-Fi is currently being blocked by RFKill. Again, more security. We can actually enable this, and in fact, this might be desirable. Yeah, so the next thing I want to show you is how to unblock. You'll notice that it had mentioned RFKill. It's a little utility in here. Now, it's actually telling me this WLAN, this is your Wi-Fi. If it just says LAN or is it Ethernet, ETH, that would be your physical connection. But in this case here, being RF, this is actually all about your radios. So it's showing I've got a Bluetooth radio and a Wi-Fi radio. And so the Bluetooth is still good. But in order to, bring in the Wi-Fi, say I don't want to plug this thing in next to the router, I want it downstairs or something like that, I can actually, again, use the sudo command, or otherwise it will fail. Sudo rf kill. Now we just want to unblock, and then the name, WLAN. So it doesn't really give you any feedback. I'll just run rf kill one more time. So now it's saying that both are unblocked. So this is a good thing. Again, I'm really glad that the Raspberry Pi developers have kind of put those little helpers in to kind of remind you of things. Otherwise, anyone that would be brand new wouldn't have an idea to use this utility. That's kind of the catch, is with, for those of us that are very used to a graphical user interface, we have all the options in front of us. It's just a matter of finding them. And so the console or terminal, I'll use the word terminal now that we're in Linux land. The fact is that it's very powerful if you know what you're typing, but you need to have a vocabulary first. You need to have quite a vocabulary of words in order to use, in order to even just work the terminal. So it's someplace that it's a little foreign to me, and I like to get back into the programming, which I know a little bit better, and I don't like staying in this terminal that much. But I mean, your mileage may vary. You might be very adept at using these things based on your background. But these are, again, I'm really starting from a beginner's point of view, where I've never seen this before. What do I type? One more thing that is a little bit important in the Linux system with the Raspberry Pi is to make sure that you are using the most current version. Yes, we did download direct off the internet, but there's security patches, fixes, bug releases, those types of things. We can actually do that from the command line here. Again, myself back onto the terminal. So again, we're going to use sudo, and we're going to use a little program called apt. And what I want to do is update. And so what I will do is I'll go to the servers, and any kind of updates to the software that's on your Raspberry Pi that someone has put on the internet and said, hey, we need to do a bug fix or improvement of some sort. That will do it. So you can see it's running through, and it goes up to the internet and finds these packages. So it's starting to download the various packages. So it's just really a matter of just let it kind of go through, and this way you're guaranteed to have a brand new install with all the updates, and hopefully a better operating system. Now, the other one that caught me was, you can see here, it's gone through and read everything, and it's grabbed the update, but it hasn't really done anything. So you can see I got 90 packages can be upgraded. So it'll run through. You can actually get a list of everything that needs to be upgraded. But if you're not really too interested in running through that entire list, because hey, we're new here, I don't know any of this, we can just go to sudo apt upgrade. Now be prepared, this might take a little bit of time, but it will go through and start asking you how much additional space. So right down here, okay, so another 190 megabytes in the archive. So we can say yes or no. You want to be conscious of how much space. My SD card is 32 gigabytes, which is, by all standards, still quite large. It would take me quite a long time. The operating system sits at around 5 gigs. So you don't want to put any really heavy, large programs on. That's why we're kind of playing in a terminal here, trying to use the smaller programs. But in this case, 190 megabytes, isn't going to chew up a whole lot of space. So I'm just going to say yes to continue. And we'll just let it run through, and it will start downloading and installing and updating. Now we've looked at the RF kill, and so everything's unblocked right now. But from this point, I don't have a graphical interface in order to do a whole lot in order to actually, how do I log into my Wi-Fi? Well, I can do that by typing in sudo, and I'm using that Raspberry config. So this is what I was trying to find before. I can go to my system options. It says first option here, wireless LAN. So what is a SSID? Well, we'll get to that in a second here. So I'm going to pick my country. In my case, I'm Canada. Now I can select my SSD. Now this is going to be the sticker that's put on your Wi-Fi router. A lot of times these are now set. You might have actually set this up yourself, so you're going to have to dig through your paperwork and kind of go from there. I'll just grab my information off of the router. So in my case here, I gotta stop using my mouse. This is all keyboard. So now there's the patch phrase. So this is the key that has been provided on your router. Or if you've set it, make sure you use the one that is there. And then just hit OK. So now it's saved that information, and if everything's correct, I should now be able to unplug the Ethernet cable and move this thing around and still find this. Now, you might want to double check if you're using the direct IP, the 192.168. It may have changed the last two digits of that address, so you might want to go back and double check